Hi, thanks for joining us. I'm Tom Green here with this edition of NECA Newscast. A lot has happened since we were last with you. The first year of President Obama's administration is in the books, and this edition is going to center around what we're working on politically with the White House, Congress, and other branches of government. We'll discuss how our legislative priorities have shifted in response to the current political climate. We'll talk health care reform and its current status. And finally, we'll hear about how our governmental affairs team is taking on the challenge of direct political action on behalf of our members. Stick around. NECA Newscast starts right now. The end of year one for President Barack Obama turned out to be very different than the way it started. Partisan rancor has turned the process from being about solutions and change to being about political gain. Now, in spite of the gridlock, NECA hasn't stopped being optimistic that things can still get done in Washington.
Well, with the Obama administration, we found after a year that we see where promise kind of collides with reality. And there were a lot of legislative changes promoted over this last year, but we see very few coming to fruition.
We've adjusted our priorities to reflect the new administration.
The new legislative priorities for NECA include an increased focus on job creation, especially surrounding small business, and reduced taxes, both issues that NECA contractors have a stake in.
The nice thing is to see the emphasis on small business, because that's really where NECA members fall into the category, the business category. And so we're looking ahead at the legislative agenda and trying to promote anything that will help promote jobs and growth and work for our industry.
We've looked at things like estate tax relief. Our approach now has been more toward reform of the tax, seeking the highest possible exemption with the lowest possible tax rate.
NECA continues to develop relationships on your behalf with individual congressmen and senators. They're on Capitol Hill every day, meeting with them and their staffs and arranging constituent meet and greets on a regular basis. As the election rolls around, rest assured the legislative staff is working in high gear for member electrical contractors.
We are really well known on Capitol Hill, and so we can make sure that the message that electrical contractors have is being heard by our leaders in Capitol Hill.
Speaking of political action, 2009 was a banner year for ECPAC, the Electrical Contractors Political Action Committee. The role of ECPAC can't be understated in this election year, a year that will definitely see the winds of political change blow.
Thanks to the efforts of NECA contractors and our chairman, Larry Cogburn, we raised a record amount of contributions in 2009. $800,000 was secured from over 1,100 contributors.
John Grau believes those sort of figures reflect the mood toward the atmosphere in Washington, and raising money like this can only be an encouraging sign for electrical contractors.
Look how much impact the federal government in tax policy, in rules and regulations, everything else impacts our members' average everyday business.
What happens in Washington isn't thousands of miles away. It's right outside your front door. It's in your business, and it's affecting you right now. When you get involved and stay involved with ECPAC, you're helping to change the system so it works for you. The health care debate is another political firebrand that has ground the work of Washington to a halt. Questions loom. Will we see meaningful health care reform this year? How does the new-look Senate shape the current and future debate? And why is it important for NECA to weigh in on this issue? Our Bethesda team had this to say.
There's a reconciliation process that could factor into this. It's a very complicated process, but in short, it would involve the passage of legislation on health care that deals with budget-related matters rather than programmatic or policy-related changes.
In a major acknowledgement of union construction and the electrical industry, the Merkley Amendment to the Senate bill would allow for companies of 5 or fewer employees to be exempt from any employer mandate, instead of the current language that would exempt businesses with 50 or fewer employees. To NECA, this is a fairness issue that can't be overlooked.
We think it's the right thing to do. We look after our IBEW partners, and we think that health care is the proper way to look after our workers.
NECA member concerns with both versions of the bills continue to be shared with our legislative team, and we're listening. An excise tax on plans, increased taxes on small business owners, lack of medical malpractice reform, and the inclusion of coverage for illegal immigrants are among the causes of concern for NECA members. Our team is working both sides of the aisle to find allies supportive of our vision of health care reform. Finally, on today's show, we want to remind you that the NECA Legislative Conference and PLC Summit is coming up in May. There will be important speakers, access to your members of Congress, networking opportunities, and a chance for you to voice your concerns in person to NECA's legislative and governmental affairs teams. We'll discuss worker misclassification, healthcare concerns, and hear the success stories and challenges that legislative teams from NECA chapters all across the country have experienced. Mark your calendar for May 4th through 6th in Washington, D.C., with more details to come on a future edition of NECA Newscast and on NECANet.org. That's it for this edition of NECA Newscast. Thanks for being with us. Remember, for all of the best information on NECA and the electrical industry, make sure you bookmark NECANet.org and be sure you go to electrictv.net and get on the RSS subscription list if you haven't done so already. That way you won't miss a thing. I'm Tom Green. See you next time.